Good morning. This is Robin with Hope from the Well, and I'm so glad that you chose to tune in to us this morning. But also, we are on YouTube, so you might be listening there too, Miss Connie. You realize that we get on YouTube too?
Yes, that's why we comb our hair nice.
Yes, because when you're looking on YouTube, you can see us. But we're so glad to be here today, and of course I've got Miss Connie with me, and we are continuing to talk about women of the Bible. We've got one today you might not have thought of, so I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about today. I do want to share with you an upcoming event on May the 11th. We will be hosting our first, really, women's conference at Women at the Well.
How exciting.
And, yes, and so we will start that in the morning. We'll have some guest speakers. We got Roxanne coming to speak, and I can't wait to hear her. And then Tanya, one of our staff members, the Lord has laid on her heart something to say. Our theme is wonderfully made well. That's the theme.
Oh, wow.
And so in talking about how God has made us fearfully and wonderfully, and that word wonderfully I think means amazing.
Yes.
So, and that kind of brings me to what we're going to talk about today. The women in the Bible were not considered to be especially fearfully and wonderfully made.
They were not.
In that day.
They were not. They are of no account.
Yes. So that takes us to where we're at today with our woman that we're going to be talking about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, would you like for me to go ahead?
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, sure.
All right. But as we look and view the women in the Bible, it is important that we look at the culture where they lived and the time that this happened. If we do not consider the culture, it is easy to pass over these women and their life and that they would be considered of little significance. Women of the time of the book of Judges was about 1200 BC, and their life was considered of no account. And today we are going to talk about a concubine. And in throughout the Bible, that occasionally that word shows up, and concubines were considered to be of marital status. They were above a regular concubine. There is a special concubine that had marital status above the wife, below the wife, but above a normal concubine.
Well, that kind of brings us to the one we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
And there was a Levite that had a concubine.
Yes.
And so the Bible talks in Judges 19, beginning there, that this concubine was unfaithful to that Levite and left him and went to live with her father. And he leaves and goes to find her. And so that he goes to find her at her father's house. They stay there. The father continues to say, no, stay another night. I think maybe 3-4 nights. And the last night he said, no, we're leaving. We're going on. So he leaves there with the concubine. And that brings us to the story that you're bringing out.
Okay, this Levite is traveling home to his city. And he is not, he's traveling through cities, and he is not staying in any city that is run by pagans. He stays only in cities that are either populated or run by the Israelites. And as he is traveling to this city called Geba, which is an Israelite city, he determines that that is where he is going to spend the night at that night. Now, the men of Geba were planning on gang raping this Levite. But instead, he pushed his concubine out the door towards these rapists. Judges 19:25 says, they raped and abused her till she died. The Levite gathered her up her dead body, he took her home and cut her in 12 pieces and sent it to the other tribes of Israel, calling them to assemble and create war or whatever needed to be done to capture these rapists. Now, this is a horrible account, a display of moral depravity. These men were like the men of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Levite, however, was no better. He pushed her out to the rapist. His selfish and lack of compassion and unconcern was way beyond our comprehension. Have you got something you would like to say about it? Okay. While the story terrifies us, it does fill in the blank of how women were viewed in the times of the book of Judges. We can read how this account of this low society can go when they fail to affirm the values and obedience of the laws that God has made. Remember, this Gabah city was an Israelite city. However, the other tribes did come together to stand against the city of Gabah and even the tribe of Benjamin, and they created war against the Benjamites. There is much we can learn from this account. This nameless woman with her life did bring about, with her death, within the tribe, they did go after these evil men. They did capture them, and they put restrictions on the Benjamites that changed the way they handled their women and men for years to come. While this story does horrify us, we can rest assured that when we look to God, that He will. Now, our society right now has become so desensitized of the marvelous gift of life and modesty that God has given us, that we have become a nation of sexual perversion. We have those that fail to affirm the values of God's laws. We are in disobedience in so many areas. We have sex trafficking and transgenderism. We have become a society, I'm sorry to say, of hedonism.
Miss Connie, I'm looking at this story in verse 19, verse 1.
Yes.
And it says this: it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel. And we're in a time when there is no king in the heart.
There's no leadership.
There's no king, there's no leadership, and there's no king in America's heart. Jesus is the king.
Yes, He is.
And so the lack of a king in a heart will cause someone to do all kinds of things. And that's what was going on in the days of Judges. There was no king in the land. And so they were doing what was right in their own eyes. And that's what these people did that came in. And they had to put a stop to that.
Yes. And they did.
Yeah.
It took many lives. If you read chapters 20, 21, and 22, you see that they did go to war against the Benjamites. And they did put restrictions on them, so that at a later time they could not get wives out of any of the other tribes. But so what they did, they kind of felt sorry for what they had done to the Benjamites, because there was going to become incest and their genetic pool is going to be ruined. So what they did, they allowed a holiday once a year for the men to come in to the other tribes and capture a bride. They allowed that and just kind of turned their head and didn't watch to see what happened. So they did take care of their society, and we are to do this because it is so easy to see that this who was an Israelite city, allowed the paganism and the corruption to come in and influence how they handled not only their day-to-day thing, but they didn't take care of the wrong that was growing, the practices that were growing. They turned their head and let them to come in and captivate the society and their culture. That's
an eye-opener as to what is going on in our world and our country today.
This society had become one where they actually did not understand what honor was to life. They did not honor life. They did not honor modesty, and they didn't understand. They were so rude, crude, and morally depraved. They didn't understand that God puts in each one of us. There's 8 universal needs of mankind. It doesn't matter whether you were born in the bush or in a castle. We all have the same needs. And the first one is to be treated with honor and dignity. These men definitely did not treat anyone with honor or dignity. And for each of us to rule and have control over ourselves, and to have security where we're not exposed in our body and in our relationships, and that we have provision for our body, our food, shelter, clothing, and fulfillment, to develop fully, potentially, with all of the gifts that God put in us, and freedom, where we have liberty to make choices and to move without restraint, and we need intimate relationships. And the last one is to know the Creator God. And I have people that say, oh, I don't care whether I know God or not. Oh, yeah, you have a hole. We all have a hole in our soul. Yes. And the only way it is filled is with an intimate relationship and knowing that God is God. And you let Him fill that hole in your soul.
You know, I'm thinking about a lot of the ladies that I have in the program here. So many of those things that you're just talking about, of those 8, are missing, have been missing. But we see that when they come to know their Creator God,
yes,
then they begin. Then these things that you talked about above there is filled as well. And we see when most of these are not filled, they try to fill it with other things.
Yes,
drugs,
sex,
alcohol, relationships,
power.
Yes, even careers. You know, and none of that works. And so it's just a continual, almost like feeding of trying to get something that will fill that void in their life.
Yes.
And thank you, Lord, that Jesus is that void in that life. And when we receive Him as our personal Savior and we come to know God intimately, then He's what fills that, and He redeems us.
He does.
From the curse of the law.
He does. Yes. And He creates a beautiful story.
Yes, He does.
Yes, He does
in our
lives.
We have so many women that can identify with this concubine, treated like she was nothing, thrown out the door, and just given. Miss Connie, I've had ladies that I've counseled with here at Women at the Well that have said, you know, my dad just turned me over to people who would, you know, abuse me for money or for drugs.
Yes.
Their own father.
Yes.
That happens in this country.
Yes.
In our local area, and it just blows my mind, you know, and it's because there's no king in their heart.
That's right.
Just like the beginning of this story.
That even what you just said reminded me of Lot in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, how he took his own daughters and gave them to the immoral men to to rape them or whatever. What kind of a father is that? What kind of a man is that?
It's someone who, and in this culture, that was okay, in that day.
Yes.
But it is not okay. Everyone has the right to be treated with honor and dignity.
Yes.
And if you're out there listening and you feel like you've not been treated with honor and dignity, you have the right to be treated with honor and dignity. And the first step, though, is to get to know the Lord.
Yes.
He will meet that need. Well, we're out of time today.
Oh, it's good.
And it's been a good time. We could talk so much more about this story.
Yes, we could.
But thank you for tuning in to Hope from the Well today. And remember, if you have Jesus, you always have hope.